Welcome to The Kingdom, a podcast dedicated to CCBC Essex Athletics and a land defended by Sir Ross's Knights. Now here's your host, Rocco Jeppy.
Hello, Knights Nation, and welcome to Season 2 of The Kingdom podcast. I'm your host, Rocco Jeppy, and joining me, as he will most times, the voice of men's and women's soccer, women's volleyball, women's basketball, and men's and women's lacrosse. It's Aaron Thomas. Aaron, thanks for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me for Season 2. Season 1 was a lot of fun, and I'm hoping Season 2 will be more of the same.
I think it will be. So a lot to talk about, a little bit of time. The last time we were on, we were gearing up for the NJCAA Division II Women's Basketball Tournament. Of course, like many things in the world, that tournament did not happen due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And while many things have changed, for example, how we're doing this podcast, there's a lot to celebrate in the Kingdom for the 2019-2020 season. So today we're going to recap the season that was, and for some, the season that was incomplete, 2019-2020. As we said, a lot of changes.
There's a lot of awesome things to recap in terms of sports here at last season for CCBC Essex.
Yeah, so we're going to get it started. We're going to go by season, and we'll go alphabetically here as we start, Aaron, with the men's soccer team. They win their 8th straight Region 20 Division II title, or Division 1 title, excuse me. Of course, moving to Division 2 for the 2020-2021 season. They picked that region victory up against their sibling campus, Catonsville, 5-0 win in the final last year. And the move to Division 2, taking away nothing from the Knights. Those that don't know, CCBC is a Division II college. It's just up until this year, there was not a Division II soccer or cross country for that matter. But let's get started out on the stat sheet and a couple of guys with 10-plus goals last year, Aaron.
Yeah, Isaiah Price being one of those players, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or did he not come up?
Yeah,
I had him highlighted here as a second straight All-American season, so I figured he was one of those guys who had the double-digit scoring. Another great year for Price, and definitely just wanted to give him his shout-out for second straight All-American season. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's not easy to do, especially in that division where you're dealing with talent, from around the country, the likes of, Monroe, who we see every year. And right ahead of him, Dago Adachi, the freshman from Japan, he led the team with 15 goals. But it seemed like Price, when he was scoring, a lot of his goals were in opportune moments. Of course, we remember the one that put him as the national play of the week with that free kick from about 30 yards out, burying that one. And just as a side note, head coach Joe Fiedler, in his 8 seasons with the Knights, he's had at least one All-American every year. So that kind of speaks to the job that they're doing on the coaching staff as well.
Yeah, it really does. And that coaching staff, I'm sure we'll talk about a lot here in this episode because I think they're going to play. I mean, they, of course, played a huge role in last season's team, and they're going to play a huge role in moving forward as well with this different season that we have coming up. But Isaiah Price, from what you just said, it seemed like he had the clutch gene for last year's team.
Yeah, I think I could agree with that. When the defense was called upon, they were kind of general out there on the field. Was goalkeeper Jack Roby. Jack had a pretty stellar year for a freshman in the region. He finished 5th in saves with 89 and had the 4th best save percentage, .761. And just over 1.5 goals per game, which was 4th in the region. A pretty solid goalkeeper, somebody that, more often than not, Coach Fiedler knew he could count on.
Yeah, he really did. And it was a tough shoes to follow for Jack Roby. And it's really tough shoes to follow for every goalkeeper every 2 years, when another one comes in, because it kind of just seems like Coach Fiedler and the staff keep growing these solid goalkeepers and bringing them in through the program.
Yeah, it seems like just when you think you're going to lose somebody, you bring somebody else in that just not just filling the role, right? Because we've been watching these games long enough. We know there are some teams around the nation and the region that they have goalies that are just kind of filling a role. But it seems like the coaching staff, which starts with Coach Fiedler, they're always looking to reload. It doesn't matter, where they are. I mean, We mentioned Isaiah being a two-time All-American, and they went out and surrounded him with a couple of quality players. We mentioned Dago, and then of course you have Rin Yasoi, who came in as well as a part of that Japanese trio. They're always looking to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. And they'll be looking to get better this season. And last season, it was so much fun to watch. You highlighted there or brought up the trio. That was a lot of fun to watch. Not just those three play, but also to hear the interactions with their teammates and whatnot, and to know, what kind of friends they made during that whole experience. And it was a lot of fun watching that last season.
Oh, most definitely. And before we head on to our next group here, let's just take a moment to appreciate what was, I think, in my opinion, the highlight of that season, the comeback against Frederick, which, you had some great calls. We've highlighted it multiple times on some highlight reels. That was my favorite game of the year. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it certainly was. That was a lot of fun. Comebacks they're always something special, but to be there for that one, that's one of those ones you don't forget. And for me to say that from up in the booth, I'm sure that you have your own unique perspective of that being on the field, and the players, of course, even have a more unique perspective of that being the ones who are a part of the game and writing the story themselves. But that was a heck of a story.
Yeah, it was surreal, I think, to be down there, especially off that corner. And obviously, I didn't get to hear your call of it until later because I was on the field. But it didn't look like a good quarter. I mean, corner Rin, most often, more often than not, is going to put that ball in the box. And maybe that was a set play to keep it on the ground, get it up near the top of the box. Because what happened is he put that one top of the box, and the Frederick goalkeeper ended up getting screened out by two of his defenders, and the ball really, I believe, if memory serves me, was probably about 2 feet to his left, and just rolled right by him. He never saw it.
Yeah, it was one of those ones where I'm sure that goalkeeper has spent a few nights or a few minutes at least thinking about that moment, what could have been, because it was one of those ones where if he's in the right position, could have made the save. But soccer, they say football is a game of inches, but
Mm-hmm.
football is a game of inches as well.
I would have to agree with that. Let's stay on the pitch, if you will, and move over to the women's side of things, where it was, just an absolute exciting year. They win the region, or excuse me, the conference for the first time in 17 years. They pick up their first regional title since 2012, and then they get a national tournament appearance bid, which we joked about it when we were in the room waiting on the at-larges to be announced, that of the coaching staff, the student athletes, and myself, it was only head coach Joe Fiedler and I that were even alive in 1995, the last time the team had gone to the national tournament.
Yeah. And by the way, they had a 19-game winning streak too. By the way, I don't. Did you mention that in that part? I mean, it was a real coming out party for the players, the coaches, and the program as a whole. It was, I just talked about how much fun it was to watch the men's soccer team, but man, it was maybe even more fun to watch the women this year, or last year, excuse me.
I would agree with that. I think, that opening loss to a Monroe team that is, perennially good, and missing 6 or 7 starters in that opening game, really showed. They lost by double digits. But then to come back and not only rattle off 19 straight, but to put 10 shutouts out there, and still with giving up 15 goals in the opener, they outscored their opponents 121-44 come the end of the year. Obviously, a big part of that was Kara Dietrich with 52 goals, number 2 in the nation.
Yeah, it's incredible. I remembered that she had a lot of goals, but when you sent me the notes for the show today and I saw that 52 number right next to her name, it's impressive to see it there. It's so much time has passed. It's 52 goals, and she wasn't even first in the nation. So, I mean, it was a really impressive season there for Dietrich. And coming back, it'll be interesting to see what she has for her sophomore campaign.
And she picked up the postseason accolades, obviously all conference, all region, and she became the first Knights women's soccer student athlete to pick up an All-American honor since 2002. So really just a great turnaround for this team. It started last season the season before last, and when Coach Fiedler said let's schedule some great teams, let's play the best of the best. They went through, they went 7-9-1, and I think a lot of people forget that in his first season taking over that program, he's coaching both teams, and they had their quote unquote struggles, but they were playing high quality opponents, and I think that really prepared them for the 2019 season.
Yeah, and I remember talking to Coach Fiedler last season when we had him on the podcast, and he talked about how turning around a program kind of begins with the schedule and committing to those tough opponents right off the bat, because you need to be tested, and that's how you get better.
Absolutely. Not to be outdone, Aaron, women's cross country last season, again, another quality head coach in Noah Hutton, getting that program back on track. They win their first Region 20 title since 2012. Gabrielle Turner, Carson Marcelino really set the pace for this team. They both qualified and went to the national tournament in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But this was a full team effort because, without a full team, obviously you can't win a region. But you have to run quality races, and this team did that last year.
Yeah, they certainly did. You can speak to that much more than I can. Cross country a little bit out of my expertise, but I know that speaking to you all of last season and talking to other people around the program, there was a lot of excitement around the program and a lot of noise where there wasn't a few years ago. So that's always good.
Yeah, definitely. So we mentioned Turner and Marcelino. The rest of that team last season, Marissa Hernandez, Elisa Lawton, Amber Pierce, and Genevieve LaFawn, all falling in line at the right time to win the regional championship, which was held at Hagerstown Community College. So that's actually gonna take us up to our first break. When we return, we'll continue the 2019-20 recap, and we'll have our first guest of the season. So stick around, see who shows up. I'm Rocco Jeppy alongside Aaron Thomas, and you're listening to the Kingdom Podcast, a podcast dedicated to CCBC Essex Athletics.
Let's talk about college. Times have changed, and I say no to an education at the cost of crippling debt, because paying off student loans for the next 30 years is not in my financial plans.
Rethink what's possible with CCBC. Visit us online and see what you can be.
Times have changed, and I will not stay stuck in a job because college has no time for me. I will not let a limited schedule limit me.
Rethink what's possible with CCBC. Visit us online and see what you can be.
All right, we are back on the Kingdom Podcast. Rocco Jeppy alongside Aaron Thomas, and we are joined now by CCBC Essex Athletic Administrator Greg Witkop. Greg, we appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So we've just finished.
Appreciate it, Greg.
We just finished recapping men's and women's soccer, women's cross country. How about you start by giving us your thoughts on those teams? Obviously, all three winning regional championships last season.
I mean, yeah, I was just going to lead with, it's a tough act to follow, 3 regional championships, women's soccer advanced to nationals, men's soccer advanced to districts. The good news is you have some, there's a lot of talent coming back for all 3 teams. So the one tricky part of everything that we've been dealing with is the recruitment. Essentially everybody had a spring wiped out, so I think it benefits us a little bit when we have programs that have been pretty competitive. Starting with cross country, we've added some pretty talented freshman student athletes to a group returning with some solid runners back. And I think they're at 6 or 7 right now, which is a solid team. Now, not running cross country in the fall, we'll kind of transition for this spring to track and field. So it's a little bit of a different setup. Not really the regional competition. So it's really running for time and for potential advancement to nationals. So, but the one thing it might do is it might put a couple of our student athletes into more of their wheelhouse distances. We have some that are maybe traditionally middle distance runners who maybe can now run a little more middle distance. And we may even add a couple of sprinters or some specialty events like the hurdles or the jumps or the throws to our groups, whether it's on the men's side or the women's side. So a little bit of a different year for them, but still an opportunity to compete. As far as the soccer goes, men's soccer, again, they look solid to this point in the fall with what they've been able to do. They have a very solid recruiting class with a group of returners that are kind of battle tested now and know what to expect. So I'm expecting another very solid year out of the men's soccer program. Women's soccer, I mean, it starts with Kara Dietrich. I mean, not a lot of teams have somebody coming back with a 52 goal scorer who was an All-American. So there's a lot of talent there back, and there's a pretty good group of newcomers. So just getting them to mesh together, the uncertainty of, what the schedule looks like and starting in April versus starting in late August, early September, that's all going to be a little tricky to mesh it all out, as we'll talk about later. But on paper, they have a pretty solid group, very athletic, and they've been working hard through the fall.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, definitely got off to a quick start in the fall with those teams. Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, I was going to say it was a lot of fun last year watching the, you summed up the cross country pretty well. I don't know much about that past my expertise, but it was a lot of fun watching the men's and women's soccer last year, and a lot of excitement around those two programs headed into this year, even though, of course, we have some changes.
Yeah, definitely some changes, which kind of transitions into the next part of our questioning. Most of our sports move to the spring. Greg, as you had mentioned, cross-country student athletes are going to run track and field. Essex is going to have 8 teams participating all at once. Before we tackle that subject, tell us about the newness of fall practices and how the teams are adjusting.
I mean, right now, I think our coaches especially and our student athletes are really happy to have an opportunity to be out there with them, even if it's on an A-B format, even though there's restrictions related to how a typical practice looks. In the fall, especially for our spring sports, they're looking to instill that discipline. They're looking to instill, here's how we're going to go about doing things on a day-to-day basis. And these are the expectations for being a part of our program. Look at men's lacrosse with a new coaching staff. So looking to kind of lay down their framework for how we're going to move forward into the spring season. It's kind of a different, the soccer programs typically have kind of been able to use playtime as a way to instill that discipline, and people know they're impacting where they are in the depth chart by how they perform in those 2 or 3 weeks of August. So now it's a little bit of a different mind frame for them as to how we build the team and build it the way we want it to be over this more extended period of the fall.
I mean, it's definitely new for everybody, and I think you hit it. Yeah, everybody's just trying to adjust. They're gonna try and work out that playing time as best they can. So what, with everything happening in spring, kind of the last point we have here is definitely on a lot of people's minds. Talk about the spring, what the challenges, the excitement. What do you foresee come mid-January when everything gets rolling?
Well, I mean, the tough part is, you're kind of waiting for what's next. We're all working together on plans. I think logistically we are in very sound position. I think there's a lot of schools that are worried about finances, that are worried about the logistics. I think here, we're blessed to have leadership that is supportive of us as a program. And then also we're blessed to have a great staff. So I think the concerns about how are you going to run these two teams at once, or maybe you have games going on on the same day, whether at different locations or one inside and one outside. That's really the least of my concerns. I think the biggest question to answer is from an athletic training perspective, but we kind of have some things in the works related to that. So I think we have a lot of those questions answered. I think it's just the landscape of athletics nationally, what things occur over the next 2 or 3 months that impact us. But right now, like we've said to our coaches, like our coaches have said to our student athletes, control the controllables, control the things that are within your own personal control. That might be conditioning, that might be academics, that might be, commitment to these fall workouts and following the game plan through a tough fall.
Right.
So those are the only things that we can control. So the things that we can control here internally, we're controlling, so hopefully we continue to make progress on the other parts of it. But right now, the things that we're able to plan for, we're able to organize for, we're in line with all that stuff.
Right. Most definitely. I mean, it's we'll see what all unfolds, but I think you're right. I think we're probably more prepared here than a lot of schools around the nation, and we'll see how all that unfolds. Aaron, anything to add while we still have Greg here?
I don't know. I just want to thank you for giving us your time and giving the fans your time. And I know I think I speak for a lot of the fans when I say I was already excited, but that much more excited after that little piece right there, because preparation is really going to pay off in the long run in a situation like this.
Yeah, I think you'll see, when we are able to show where our teams are. I mean, I think we're in very good position with all of our teams, just in terms of how the recruitment season went, despite being very much different than any other recruitment season we've encountered in the past, and the preparation and the work that the coaches have done to get us to this point.
Yeah, it's amazing how many areas of this that is the case. We're kind of going through that with internships right now as we're recruiting interns for the spring, and with not much going on in the fall. So we're going to have, we'll probably have the amount of interns in the spring that we normally would have for an entire academic year. So it's all over. All right. Well, Greg, we appreciate it as always. It's a pleasure. Can't wait to get you back on once the seasons get rolling, especially come basketball season. We know that's a passion of yours, and we're, obviously can't wait to get your insight on that. We appreciate it again. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
All right, folks, we're going to hit another break. When we return, Aaron and I are going to talk about the juggernaut that was the 2019-2020 women's basketball team. Rocco Jeppy alongside Aaron Thomas. You're listening to the Kingdom Podcast, a podcast dedicated to CCBC Essex Athletics.
Let's talk about college.
Times have changed.
We've changed.
I refuse to accept an education that comes with a mountain of crippling debt.
No longer will I stay stuck in a job because college has no time for me.
I will not confuse a fancy name for a quality education. Sorry, Pops.
Let's talk practical.
Let's talk flexible.
Let's talk smart education.
Rethink what's possible with CCBC. Visit us online at ccbcmd.edu and see what you can be.
All right, folks, we are back. And again, thanks to Athletic Administrator Greg Witkop for taking the time to be with us. Now we get to probably, arguably, one of the most dominant teams in the history of women's basketball in the region, but for sure, arguably one of the most dominant teams around the kingdom last year. And that was women's basketball, returning after a 15-year hiatus. Aforementioned guest, Greg Witkop, went out, and I don't think he could have got a better coach. Goes out and gets Mike Sini, who was coming off of 5 straight regional championships from Hartford Community College, and he kept the ball rolling. He comes in, leads this team to a 30-2 record, and just some titles that just jump right out at you. And they win the Maryland JUCO Conference for the first time in 38 years. And they win the region and go to the national tournament for the first time since 1978. I don't even know if my parents knew each other in 1978, let alone be on this planet. Just a spectacular start. Sini, Maryland JUCO Women's Basketball Coach of the Year. And he surrounded himself with a lot of talent and a lot of quality head coaches or quality assistant coaches.
Yeah, he said he couldn't have brought in a better head coach, and the people who do the season awards, they felt the same exact way, because they, like you said, they gave him the Coach of the Year award, and it was much deserved. 30-2 record, it absolutely speaks for itself. But when you watched the team or you followed the team, particularly from day one, that he really drove that bus, and Coach Sini would be the first to give all the praise to the players, and then a lot more praise to his assistant coaches as well. So it was a great staff altogether and a great year for women's basketball.
Yeah, just an amazing collective effort. And, you know, we're not even, I can't pick out one particular game because it was like, it was so dominant, you know, multiple 100-point games. The biggest, you know, of them all was Maya Moy, who scored 81 points to set an NJCAA women's basketball record across any division. And then, you know, you have that, they called them the Big Three in Moy, Casey Gagan, who is she was actually the first signee of this team, and Aislinn Flynn, the tall forward. All three of them moving on to Division I at the NCAA level, with Moy and Gagan going to UMBC, and Aislinn Flynn going to Long Island University. And the scary part, Aaron, is that they have returners, and they have restocked like I've never seen a women's basketball team restock. This team coming up could be better than last year's team, which is really scary.
Yeah, it's crazy. It really could be. And, you know, you talk about those, you know, new players that are coming in. We don't know much about them in terms of seeing them with our own eyes yet, but we know on paper and from what we've seen on tape, everything looks good. But I want to highlight some of those returning players. You know, you had so many players who showed up and, you know, played key roles on the team, whether it was coming off the bench or filling in the starting rotation. You know, there's just so many players coming back who are going to be better off for their experience on the team last year, and they're going to play much bigger roles on the team this year. So, I mean, like you said, this team really could be better than they were last year, and that's saying something since they only lost 2 games last year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. And last year's team at any given time had 8 or 9 different young women that could start on the team, and so you know the starting lineups were a little bit challenging. And you know, Coach Cini really just putting them together with his staff based on the opponents. But the scary part is that you know a lot of games he took those players out, and you know so you have returners that not only played, but they got a lot of quality minutes last year, and so it could be something special again this year.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really benefits Coach Cini, not just this season with all the changes, but I think it's something that benefits him moving forward, and it's something you see a lot of basketball coaches do. And you know, he has a system. He has a commitment to running his system and playing basketball a certain way. So you know, he's going to find ways that even though there's going to be so many changes this year with the upcoming season, he's going to find ways to get players in the best position to do not only what is best for them, but it was best for the team as well. So, you know, it's a lot of excitement last year with the team. It's incredible to say, even more excitement for the team this year.
Yes, absolutely agree with that. Moving on to the spring, which unfortunately this is going to be the smallest area because that is when COVID hit. Men's lacrosse, they got to play 2 games, unfortunately going 0-2. They lost their season opener 16-4 to then number 1 ranked Nassau, and then they battled number 4 Genesee, but ultimately fell 14-8. There's been some changes in lacrosse. Aaron, you've been here long enough. Tim King, who took an assistant position, he's the top assistant, I believe, I believe he's the top assistant. He goes to Flagler down in Florida, a new program headed up by former legendary head coach here at Essex, Brian Duncan. And coming back to the Kingdom for a second stint is Sean Burke, and already these fall practices have looked good. They've been intense. They've been on point. And this roster is loaded with talent. I want to say at last count, the roster was sitting at 50 for the fall. So, you know, I think Sean Burke's going to pick up right where he left off as far as the tradition and the determination and will to make this team get back into the national conversation.
Absolutely. He absolutely will. And one of the key words he said there was intensity. Anyone who's been around Coach Burke knows that he's an intense guy. Game day, he's one of those guys that if you're not on the team, maybe you want to stay away from him because you may get the impression from him that he's going to suit up there. And I mean that with the most respect possible because I'm sure that's the kind of coach you want to play for and you want to win for, most importantly. But there's a lot of excitement around Coach Burke coming back to the program. I know I talked to you about that. off the air, and that you were really excited about that from when you found out that he was coming back. So,
Yeah.
it was a disappointing season last year for men's lacrosse. And the one thing I have written here on my piece of paper is they were kind of robbed of growth. You kind of
Mm-hmm.
knew going into the season it wasn't like they thought they were going to be national champions. It wasn't that kind of season, but it was a season that there was going to be a lot of growth on the
Mm-hmm.
team and the coaching staff. That coaching staff ends up moving forward, but the players, robbed of a little growth, but they're going to get that year back.
Mm-hmm.
Not really, but in terms of eligibility, they'll get that
Right.
year back. So
Yeah, and it's a
it's a
great
great
point.
learning opportunity moving forward.
Yeah, great point. Something that we hadn't mentioned, that those spring athletes, they have that year of eligibility back. So we do have some returners from that team. Evan Clement, Noah Parks, to name a couple. But a lot of new faces here this year too, and I think it's going to be a good mixture, a nice meshing point for this team. There's some student athletes that are actually going to be switching positions. So some guys you might be used to seeing score some goals. You might see them elsewhere on the field this year, and that's what one of the things that Burke brings to the program is his ability to scout his talent and know where to put people, not only to help the team, because right at the end of the day, that's his number one priority, is to make the team better, but also in a way that will make the student athlete better. And one of the things one of those players that really sticks out for me over the years is Dylan McClef. Dylan McClef was here, I believe it was 5 or 6 years ago, and he was a goalie, and from Media, Pennsylvania, I believe is where he's from. There was such a backlog of quality goalkeepers that I believe that year McClef was like number 3 or 4 on the depth chart. And so what Burke started to do is get him involved in other ways, when they're winning games, 22-2, and, getting him some reps on the offense. And, if you remember McClef, I mean, he was all of 6'5", big, tall, lanky kid. And not only did he answer that challenge, but he ends up going on to Wilmington University, Division II, up in Delaware, and having an extremely good career at the 4-year level. So you better believe that, if Coach Burke tells you to play somewhere, he's doing it for the betterment of you and the team.
Absolutely. And, this is not just true in sports, and not just true, in lacrosse, but throughout sports and throughout life. Versatility will go pretty far, and, being able to stretch throughout multiple jobs and, cover multiple areas. It's a great benefit, not just for your team, but for you as a human moving forward.
Absolutely. On the women's side, Aaron, the women's team got off to a 2-0 start last year. They defeat Finger Lakes 19-13 in the season opener, and then they go on to destroy Potomac State in their second game, 21-1. One of the things that stuck out to me was in those games, so if I'm doing my quick math here, that was 41 goals. Alex Stroman scored 19 of those 41 goals, and the season cut short. She is just 39 goals from becoming the second player since the 1970s to score 100 career goals here at Essex.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah, that kind of speaks for itself. Nothing really you can back up on that. Really an incredible feat there. And, you want to say she's helped out, almost getting an extra year, but, it'll help the stats a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
on the brighter side, I guess.
It would have been
But,
interesting to watch. She off and running with 19 goals in 2 games. I mean, arguably they were scheduled, I believe, for 15 or 16 games last year. She could have hit that mark last year. I believe they're going to have 12 games this year. So, realistically, she could do it this year. And I think over the 3+ years, or the 2+ years, however you want to call it, she's going to come in playing about the same amount of games if last season would have gone the full way. But definitely going to be something to watch. A lot of returners coming back for this team too. Our goalkeeper Mackenzie Cullings will be back. Michaela Boyle will be back. Tori Santoro is back. Shelby Woodward is coming back. And then they've added a lot of talent, a lot of freshman talent coming in, and a couple of transfers. So Pretty exciting to see what this women's lacrosse program can do. Of course, head coach Candace Schroeder has been leading the fall workouts and everything. So we'll have to wait until February, March to see, but it should be something exciting.
Yeah, you certainly don't want to set expectations too high, but given the fact that you have all these returning players and they started off to the season 2-0, Stroman's 19 goals starting last year, opportunity to get 100. This could be the women's lacrosse team headed into the season could be ready for a breakout that is not that dissimilar to the breakout season the women's soccer team had last year.
Yeah.
So, not going to play 19 games, so there's no 19-game winning streak possibility here. But it could have a great season for sure.
Yeah, you hope so. Our final team of 2019-2020, a new skipper, Sean O'Connor, takes over for Mike Carter, who resigned to ultimately. I mean, down over in Allegheny, they made him an offer he couldn't refuse. He's able to leave his job teaching high school, and now is one of the assistant athletic directors, health teacher, and is the head baseball coach at Allegheny College of Maryland, which is his alma mater. So, I mean, all of that added up, you couldn't pass it up. In steps Sean O'Connor, and, the traditional trip to North Carolina, the Knights go down there and they win their season opener over Caldwell Community College and Technical School, 7-3. They drop the remaining 3 games of that trip, but then they come back home and they kind of put it to their sibling campus, beating CCBC Catonsville 9-3 and 12-11. Only days later to have the season cut short due to COVID. But it looked like O'Connor had them going in the right direction. Of course, his right-hand man, pitching coach Tim O'Brien. So it's again another situation where it's going to be exciting to see with a full slate of games, a full season, what this team can do. The baseball team sitting somewhere around 45, I believe, student athletes on the fall team. So we'll see how many of those will be with us in the spring. But that might be the team that has the longest wait as far as time to get back onto the field. But I think they're definitely going to invite it.
Well, maybe that long wait will help pay off for him in terms of extra practice time and whatnot there. And I know from talking to the head coach last year, we had a preview podcast with him before the season started. He ran down, I believe, stop me if I'm wrong, 3 or 4 pitchers that he was really excited about coming into the season. So, we didn't really get to see what happened from those guys. I know,
Right.
I'm sure they had some outings, but we didn't really get to see what the season had for those guys. So I'm sure he's still excited about them. And I'm sure, like you said, you got some new guys coming in. He's probably got 3 or 4 more that he's excited about as well. Because I know not just those pitchers that he was excited about. He was very excited about the pitching staff as well, or the coaching with the pitching, I should say. So, there's a lot of excitement with this baseball program, and I know he's an old school Cardinals fan, so we're probably going to see a lot of stealing as well. So a lot of speed on the base paths.
Yeah, I think he's a mix of old and new school. He definitely, he's not afraid to bunt. He's not afraid to hit and run. But he probably uses technology and analytics more than, and this is not meant to be disrespectful, but he probably uses that more than all the coaches in Region 20 combined. With the sophistication that he has in that stuff. I mean, he runs his own audiovisual company, so it's definitely second nature for him, and it'll be interesting to see how he puts that stuff to work when it comes to a junior college baseball team for a full season.
Yeah, absolutely will be. And I think, the baseball community, or at least a lot of, the baseball community kind of hear the analytics and they think hitting right away.
Mm-hmm.
But, the analytics spreads throughout the entire game. I'm sure
Right.
that the analytics departments and the MLB teams are working with the pitchers just as much as they're working with the hitters. So I'm sure that's playing a part in, spin rate and whatnot. So, like you said, he's using that a lot. So it'll be really exciting how that pays off for the team over what will be, at least, for this circumstances,
Right.
a full season.
Yes, I would have to agree with that. Well, we are up on our final break, pretty big segment there. So stick around. We'll come back and we'll wrap this thing up. Rocco Jeppy alongside Aaron Thomas. You're listening to the Kingdom Podcast, a podcast dedicated to CCBC Essex Athletics.
Times have changed, and I will not stay stuck in a job because college has no time for me. I will not let a limited schedule limit me.
Rethink what's possible with CCBC. Visit us online and see what you can be.
Let's talk about college. Times have changed, and I say no to an education at the cost of crippling debt. Because paying off student loans for the next 30 years is not in my financial plans.
Rethink what's possible with CCBC. Visit us online and see what you can be.
All right, folks, thanks for tuning back in. We are back off of that final break. And Aaron, looking at everything we talked about today and the interview we did with Greg Witkop, the administrator of athletics here at CCBC Essex, I think, one thing is clear. Everybody's excited to get back to some sort of athletic normalcy. But we all know that we're going to have to wait, and we're preparing our butts off to get ready for those seasons, which for us will begin in January with women's basketball.
Yeah, there's this long waiting game, but there's a lot of preparation that goes along with that. And I believe I said this when we were talking to Greg, is that preparation is going to end up paying off in the long run. On the field, on the court, but it's also going to pay off administratively as well. I know that you guys will be prepared, and this season will go off well.
All right,
will be prepared.
I think you're right. Things might look a little bit different for you in that press box, but I know you'll make the best of it, and everybody will do the best that they can. So I appreciate you coming back here. Season 2 of the Kingdom Podcast is pretty much in the books, folks. Don't forget, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. You can find us, our handle at CCBC Essex Sports. And then on Facebook and YouTube as well, just keyword search CCBC Essex Athletics. Our website, where we are constantly trying to keep you updated and get some news out there about our student athletes and programs, ccbcessexknights.com. My thanks again to our guest, Greg Witkop, the athletic administrator here at CCBC Essex. This is Rocco Jeppy for Aaron Thomas saying so long and welcome back, season number 2 of the Kingdom Podcast. We'll see you next time. So long.